the colony managers already know this, but maybe some people like me don't. How would we report those instead of individually reporting each recite?
Yeah, so, well, first things first, when you did mention auxiliary marker only, it brought up something else. Back in the day, there used to be this rule where, like, if you banded a chick, but it died within 90 days, not to give us the data, but to mark that band as destroyed and send it in that way. That's not something we do anymore. That is not a thing. Give us the data and then tell us the data, and then have the death report as a recapture, or a recovery. Because even those data are important. Like, you know, when we said that way back when, it's because we didn't have the capacity to hold those data. We do now, and we know that those data are important. Okay, for auxiliary marker only birds, usually they originally had a band, usually. And so even though they're not carrying the metal band anymore, we can link it back to that metal band and to that individual. If it's only carrying an ox and has ever only been carrying an ox, that is something we try to avoid. Well, depending on the species, there are like some plovers that only ever carry just color bands, and we have those are like separate. But I know you guys as a Roseate Tern and Common Tern group tend to put, coded. So we try not to do that. But if you have done it, it's best to try to recapture that bird, put a metal band on it. And even if you don't, or you can't get to it, give us the data anyway. We do have like little resources where we put pockets of the information somewhere, so that when recites come in, at least we can say, oh, that's not in our database, but here's the banding information and here's the contact for, and then at least get you those reports. And then, I'm sorry, what was the next question?
No, that's good. I think just the batch uploading.
Oh yeah, batch uploads. Yeah, so and it's funny because the albatross have this too. They recite, those birds, they're in plots and they're there all winter long, and they're recited once a week. And we do want those records. But if you don't want to share that many records, I think the things that are most important are like when you first saw them, when you last saw them. Those dates are important. And also, just as an example, we get a recite in, and we're like, oh, okay, here's ML1. Great. I only have banding data. This bird has never been seen, and it's 12 years old, and I'm not sure that that's really a legitimate report. Come to find out, you guys have the data that's shown that it's been seen in the same, colony every year since the year it was banded. But for us, it's a sketchy report because we don't have that historical view. And so sometimes, then we have to go back to the finder and be like, take a picture because I'm not sure that this is right. And so, data could get thrown out if we don't have that data to look back on ourselves, because we're trying to verify and vet legitimate data. And we know you don't want garbage, but at the same time, if we don't have the information, we can't give it to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but we wouldn't upload recites the same way we would recaptures, right?
Yes, you would. In the same template, you just would put code 29, which is I saw the auxiliary marker only. But okay. then you do have to provide us the metal band number, even though we know you didn't see it. That 29 code tells us that you only saw the aux marker, but you do have to have a metal band to submit. Yeah.
Okay, I will. Thank you. That is helpful. I'll move on to let Jeff ask questions.
Wasn't so much a question as a suggestion, Jennifer, that you tell them about what happens when things go into the marker hold file and what it takes to get them out of there.
Yeah, so poor Jeff, he's on our hit list of people to just like constantly send these random reports to. So that was kind of what I was referring to in the talk, is that auxiliary markers, because that's what they can see. They don't tend to report the band number. And so sometimes, and especially if they don't send us pictures, it makes it even harder. But sometimes, codes are hard to read, colors are fading. And so hunting down what bird it might be is oftentimes a very arduous task. And, especially if we don't have the marker data. Like if you guys put out RL1 and we don't know you've ever put RL1 out, hunting that down, I mean, these things take forever. It's funny because, people are like, why can't you just get to this stuff and get it done quickly? And it's like, well, this one bird took me like 5 weeks to figure out whose bird it even was. So yeah, we send a lot to Jeff, obviously, so that he can, we're like, do you know who did this bird? Like, by any chance? So poor Jeff gets a lot of the brunt of our questioning, only because he sits right upstairs from us, just so you know.
I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Lauren Walker. I'm also with the Banding Lab. And to kind of chime in on what Jen just said with the marker hold file, it's sometimes we can't match reports at all, but also it can lead to mismatched reports because we don't always get photos. And sometimes folks report dark blue bands as black or as dark green or like something that's close enough. But if there's another bird out there with that same code on a black band instead of a dark blue band, like we could completely match the report to the wrong band number. And if we don't know that there's both a dark blue band and a black band out there with that same code, it's really easy just to like go through and mismatch reports as well. So another layer of trouble that we get ourselves into.
I'm seeing a lot of questions still coming in. Would there be a riot if we skipped our break? Would everyone survive that? Or do people if you're against that, I don't want to take it away from everyone. It's only been an hour since we've been back. Okay, since Margaret said yes for everyone, then we will skip our break and keep going. We'll keep this conversation going for another 5 minutes until 3:15. And I believe Lindsay has her hand up next.
Hey, thanks. I have a question as regards obtaining coordinates for recaptures of birds that were not recaptured physically but just seen while wild and free, because that's data. The coordinates of where the bird was seen is very important for the oyster catcher people, and it's something of interest for the skimmers. So I don't want to lose that data. And so how can we get coordinates in when reporting what we've seen as a recapture? And that might be like
So encounters come in from the public and they have pinpoint coordinates. So and then it gives you if you're getting those reports back, it's got exact or centroid of the area, or county level or state level, so it tells you the coordinate precision. For recaptures, generally you're seeing those in the colonies that you are also banding in, and so those recaptures would be submitted using the locations that you have associated with that permit, and those locations are on your portal with the coordinates already there. If it's not your bird, then in a data pull, the coordinates are available. They come in the data pull, or I think you can also see them in the band history link. So, but if you just have to, there's a tab for data, not data submission, the other one, the other tab that I can't think of the name of right now. But that's where you get all your data back from us. So you can see it and pull it, and it comes out in an Excel file. So, and it's got, lat longs available.
But if I'm using the template, which I really prefer to Bandit, I very much like using it. I don't have fields for lat long.
Right. If it's your permit, then you're putting in the code for that location, and that location exists as a table on the portal for coordinates. Yeah, you would have to put it in and then pull it back to actually have the file with the coordinates on it. So you'd have to submit it and then pull it back out to get the coordinates.
So, but if we're resiting birds away from colonies, like we do a lot of resiting away from the breeding site, so we can't like my locations don't represent where we're resiting birds. They, in their entirety. And this might be like a special question for certain situations, but like I'll go to a completely different county, say, and recite birds while they're non-breeding. And so,
but
I know where those coordinates are, but I can't pass them out to other people and to you through that template. And so that's just something I've been thinking about. And I think it's important to be able to capture that somehow.
Yep. I've got two options.
Are these places that you like regularly visit to recite birds, or is it kind of just randomly you might come across them?
It's a mix. It's a mix. So some are like where we do ISS surveys, and like sometimes they're on that shoal or sometimes they're on that side of the inlet versus the other. So we put the coordinates where the bird is, like, kind of like this is exactly where the bird is. And for, like with the black skimmers, it's interesting to be able to say, oh, well, you could say, oh, they're at Mason Inlet. But what's interesting is, well, they tend to be on the one side of the inlet, which is a private island that people can't just go to and walk around on. They have to be very special and own a house there or have a friend that gave them a pass. And so you can kind of see patterns of distribution in kind of a micro scale based on, levels of disturbance, based on different levels of access. So that type of information, we're capturing now.
So
and I'd like to be able to continue to do so.
Yeah. So that level of precision in the coordinates is important to you guys and maybe not as much to us. So maybe for the data, if you want to be able to submit it to us in the recapture template, you have a location in your portal for like that shoal, that island, whatever it is. And then you can just submit all those kind of as a more like watered down precision level, if that simplifies things.
Yeah, the two options I was thinking of is that you create the location for your permit for that location, or depending on how many, if there's only like one or two in these other random spots, you can submit as encounters. It's just preferential that you submit as a recapture.
Okay, because I want to give you the bulk of our data in the way that you want it, but I also want to make sure, and I want to make sure that other people, like when I get a reciting of my birds, it's good to get that same, reasonable level of precision in the coordinates for other people that might be doing similar work, like on ISSs or just randomly, going to their site to check on their rat surveillance and discovering, oh, look, it's an oyster catcher or a skimmer or a tern, So I think kind of understanding that is going to be important for people.
Yep.
All right. It looks like there's a ton more questions in the chat. If Jen and Lauren, if you don't mind checking those out, I can also try to collect questions and email you guys and then get it back to the group. So we can go all these options.
Lauren and I will put our email addresses in the chat. Feel free to send us any questions you have, whatever. I've also uploaded my presentation to the Google thing, so you feel free to share that. There's also a similar version that we have on our website that you can go back and listen to again. It's also me talking. So all the options are there. You got all the stuff.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was really helpful. All right. Let's move on to the Roseate Tern non-breeding studies session. It's going to be led by John Herbert. And John, just like late breaking information, Jeff said he's willing to give a short presentation. Maybe not a PowerPoint, but he's willing to kick it off.
Sorry.
And so we'll just keep going as we're going. We can bleed everything down. We'll give everyone the full amount of time that they need, and we can just take away some time from other topics for discussion at the end.
That sounds good. All right, Jeff, if you're ready to go, we'll start with your presentation.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not being able putting together a decent talk. Unfortunately, I got COVID right after Thanksgiving and haven't been functioning at 100%. But I did want to present a few things real quickly. Number one is that a 2-year-old bird was banded as a roseate, this is banded as a chick up in eastern Egg Rock a couple years ago, was spotted as the first state record for this species out in Ohio this spring. And in the course of correspondence about this, I made the offhand remark about, I know 2-year-olds like to wander, but I doubt I will see it on Cape Cod this year. And I've now had to eat my words. The bird found its way back to the Atlantic coast. Apparently it didn't get back up into the Gulf of Maine. I just got their records and it wasn't listed there, but I saw it 4 days in a row up on the Cape. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that I read more than 2,000 roseate and common tern bands up on Cape Cod this year. And one of those birds now presents, again, a new age record. We have a 29-year-old roseate spotted this year, originally banded as a chick by Ian Nisbet and his crew back on Bird Island. Like I said, I'm sorry, my voice still isn't very strong now, so I'm just going to cut out. I'll answer questions via the chat.
Sounds good. Well, that got us right back on track.
Do we have any questions for Jeff? I just sent Rafa a message. I don't see him on right now. So wait for Rafa to join for the next talk until then. If he doesn't join, we can
Okay.
we can start our non-breeding conversation.
You're cutting out a little bit, John.
I'm cutting out. Is that better?
Not really. A little bit. Oh, I see Rafa.
Sorry, I couldn't understand really well if John Herbert was calling me or not. Was the cutting?
Good.
So let me try to share my screen here.
All right, can you hear me now, Allison?
Yeah, it sounds
yeah, it's
great
back.
now.
All right, I did a quick reset. All right, so we'll start our next talk. Rafa will be talking about his project studying the power line collisions in Brazil. Really exciting. So, Rafa, it's all yours.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yep.
Can you see my screen?
Looks good.
Oh, great. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rafael Revorêdo. I work in Brazil for some months, a non-profit organization dedicated to environmental monitoring and conservation. I'm also a PhD student at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte, UFRN. So today I will share key findings from our project that aims to reduce the highest known mortality rate of adult roseate terns in the Americas that we know by now. So let's see. This project, even led by SEMA in Brazil, it's the result of close collaboration with various partners and contributors, which I have tried to summarize here. The project was originally called the Tern Protection Project, but we renamed it as Aves do Mar, Birds of the Sea in Portuguese, to better connect with the local coastal communities in Brazil. So I've been presenting updates on this project at the same meeting since 2021. But to provide some context for today's discussions, let's briefly review the project timeline and key milestones on that. So the project began with the identification of bird collisions along a power line during daily monitoring by the PCCB Beach Monitoring Program. PCCB has been active since 2020, searching for stranded marine animals impacted by oil exploitation as part of Brazil's mandatory environmental compliance measures to the industry keep their activities. It's one of the biggest beach monitoring programs in the world right now. So during this monitoring, over 40 birds carrying BBL bands from the US, New York, Massachusetts, and Maine were found, and prompting international collaboration to address this issue. And this led to our 2020 funding application to the State of Birds funding, which was approved in 2021, allowing us to develop monitoring protocol and install markers as a mitigation measure in Brazil. So in 2022, we installed markers and initiated the first year of beach shoreline monitoring. During this time, the local community alerted us to collisions in a nearby road, prompting to additional off-road monitoring to our efforts. That year, we also executed a pilot telemetry study on Roseate Terns in partnership with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we secured funding from Environmental and Climate Change Canada to continue our work for 2 more years. In 2023, we implemented change in the marker distribution. We began a daily road monitoring, and we completed the second year of the beach monitoring. So now, this year marked our 3rd year of beach monitoring, of the beach shoreline monitoring, and the 2nd year of the road line daily monitoring. We also advanced discussions on the road line marking, and we conducted new telemetry studies with GPS technology, as you saw earlier this morning during Keenan's and John Herbert's amazing presentations. I will outline the initial definitions and methodologies applied to this project. The monitored area is in Galinhos, a peninsular municipality in Rio Grande do Norte state. The power line connects 2 urban communities and traverses the beach parallel to the dunes, as you can see here in the map. So connect to these red urban areas. So the power line has been placed since 1982. In the picture, you can see to the left is the sea, and while coastal wind farms established between 2013 and 2014 are visible here in the background. And the right side, we can see the dunes formation. We installed bird fly diverters from Powerline Sentry. These were deployed either from the ground or with a bucket truck, depending on the site accessibility. And we did 2 marking scans were implemented. So a denser configuration one, called heavy marking, applied just to the lateral lines. So with a 3-phase power line. And a standard pattern using a V-shape arrangement, less dense. So the marking scan was distributed in paired blocks on 8 different sectors for SATS application. And the daily monitoring was conducted during the birds' migratory season in the region, January to April, using an ATV along 4 transects covering the entire wide of the beach. After the first year, we observed a higher collision rate in 2 consecutive treatment sectors, and this led us to adjust the marker placement to address potential spatial bias, having alternated treatment configuration from 2023 to present time. So as I said in the introduction, in the first year, we started to investigate also a road line which gained priority after a single event in which 17 roseate terns, 2 red knots, and 2 goo-billed terns were found in one day. So daily monitoring on the road began in 2023 to better understand this spot and the risks in this area. And this road power line is located between evaporation ponds of a salt company. Here in the right side, you can see this. All this area is an evaporation pond. And shrimp farms in the left side. So this is the area really frequented by marine and shorebirds due to high food and roost sites availability in this area. And you can see the road crosses just in the middle with the power line leading energy to this small port that we have here to crosses in a ferry to Galinhos urban area. So after 3 years of monitoring, we consolidate some important results that provide some insights into collision dynamics and mitigation effectiveness that I will show you now. And I will start with the 2024 results, and after that, I will compare the data across these years. So in 2024, 9 birds collided with the beach line, including 4 roseate terns, and also the community notifications also reported 2 debilitated birds found nearby, but apparently not affected by collisions. In standard treatment areas. However, the standard treatment in sectors 3 and 7 had higher numbers, similar to previous years, as I will show you soon in the comparison. And for each year, we estimated mortality with the number of birds found within the designated treatment areas, splitting a buffer zone. And we corrected by carcass persistence rates and search efficiency of the team, which were measured through specific tests. For 2024, the estimated mortality was 9.5 birds, aligning closely with the observed numbers, and a significantly higher number were observed in the standard treatment. So on the road line in 2024, we found 18 birds near to the road line, including marine birds, shorebirds, passerines, and others. The others, however, only 10 animals could be confirmed as resulting from collisions. The others lacked sufficient evidence or had to be run over by cars on the road, becoming really disfigured, so we couldn't point collision causes. So, thus, using 10 animals definitely attributed to collisions, it was possible to calculate a mortality rate of 70.36 birds caused by the line in the first 4 months of 2024. So now comparing the data across these 3 years, for the beach power line, we observed that the estimated mortality compared to the number of birds found each year is very close, highlighting that the current monitoring format has been successful in closely approximating the actual number of birds collisions. We also observed that March stands out with the highest number of collisions, especially for roseate terns, coinciding with the onset of their breeding migration. We also observed annual variation in the number of birds collisions. So regarding the marker treatment, it is clear from the data that the effect of the treatment location is greater than the effect of the treatment itself. So in 2023, after altering the position of the heavy and the standard treatments in sector 3 and 4, the number of collisions in these areas remained higher. And finally, focusing solely on Roseate Tern data, we observed a reduction of over 90% in bird collisions in years with markers compared to the years with birds found by the PCCB beach monitoring project. And it's important to note that since the data was collected differently with distinct monitoring efforts, we needed to calculate a scaling factor to allow for data comparison. And who has interest on and how we did that, I would be happy to share after that. But also other statistical analysis indicated a significant reduction in the number of bird collisions after the installation of the markers. And the road line had a similar number of birds found each year, even in the first year when it was monitored every other day for only 2 months, half the time of subsequent years. We found really close numbers between these years, indicating a really variation along the years too. So the number of species also varied considerably in the road line, with some species occurring in certain years and others not. And we changed the groups of the species too, between passerines, raptors, parakeets, but especially the highest number was shorebirds and marine birds and seabirds and terns, especially terns. So some future directions for this project. In 2025, we plan to mark the entire road line and expand GPS telemetry research. This will enhance our understanding of local Roseate Tern dynamics and emerging threats. The main bottleneck, as with many projects here, remains funding. With the arrival of new collaborators and partners such as Avangrid, National Audubon, the Aquasis, and the UFRN Ornithology Laboratory, we have been able to make some new progresses. However, for this immense migratory scale project, any new collaboration is crucial. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss ideas for future collaboration and project improvement. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rafa. Really great. I didn't see any questions in the chat, so if somebody.
Yeah, this is Doug Forcell. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, how much would it cost to underground or put those through conduit along the roadside and get rid of them altogether? It seems like a really good mitigation thing that one of the wind companies could just say, well, we're going to throw some money at that right now instead of waiting 10 years for the government to come around and decide to do it.
Yeah, this would be the best solutions. We have been having the approach of really open dialogue with the energy company here to find the best ways as possible to try to mitigate this problem. And of course, the first idea that appeared from us was to put underground power line. But it was not possible, especially for the beach line has some difficulties because it's in a dune area with a lot of changing and modifications, and the line could be exposed. There's some car traffic in this area too. So the power line put themselves as argumenting about that, and also the economic factor pointed to not be a first solution that we could take for the beach power line. So we suggested and we applied the marking scans there. And the road power line, we did the same approach. We started a conversation asking to the power line company to study the possibility to put underground. But the solution that they pointed was to try to marker this power line and to test again how these markers works to the power line and to the road power line after going to other solutions as put in underground.
Did I guess my question was how much, not how how much somebody didn't want to pay for it, but if somebody gave you $1 million, could it be done? Or what, is it a matter that, oh, that would cost us too much to do it, or that it's not impractical, but undoable? And
yeah, I don't have this amount. I don't know. My knowledge limitations didn't permit to put a number here, but definitely it could be a possibility based on the setting of the area. But in the end, it's power line decision, the power line company decision, and we couldn't force more than that we already asked for, and this open dialogue that we have. And after that, it would be to try by mandatory and licensing way. So this is a distribution line, and distribution lines doesn't pass by licensing in Brazil, just transmissions lines. So the environmental agencies do not need to ask mitigation measurements for measures to distribution lines. So we need to start a really big change and the way that this could be seen by the environmental agents. And we start a dialogue with the local environmental agencies to request more compensation, and in the new distribution power line that could be close to the coast, especially in this region of the state. But the dialogue is a little bit more complicated than that.
thanks.
Joan, you had something to add?
Yeah, Rafa, wasn't there also a challenge with the dunes having some protection? So Doug, we explored that at the very beginning. And one of the big stopping points was also that the dunes were protected. There's another piece here, which is that this could be happening at many places along the coast, which is why the telemetry project was also part of this work, was to find out where there were other roost sites that may have power lines in front of them, as well as shrimp ponds behind them or salt works behind them. And you can't bury every power line on the coast of Brazil. So this experiment, I think what it has shown us is that the bird flight diverters by power line sentry with a 90% reduction, 92% reduction is really a cost-effective way of being able to take this on. In the chat, someone has a comment that it was really the data prior to the application that Samam was already collecting that gives us this great data stream of really seeing the reduction in the collisions. So I really have to hand it to this team for being able to recognize the scale of what was going on and then coming up with a solution involving industry and getting it done. It's been a very elegant project that worked really well.
Yeah, leadership by Samam to address this mitigation. I mean, this thread has been remarkable. I think I have Sarah is next, and then Atma. Sarah, you have a question?
Great talk and excellent work. I was wondering about the other main mortality was through a lot of car collisions. So I was wondering if there's been any communication about that with some of the people that use the road often.
So yeah, one of the biggest confusions in the data from the road power line is to identify if the birds are injured by cars or collisions power line, and we have been just confirming collisions if we see a lot of some signs as the type of injury in the bird, and when we crosses with the ecology of the birds and the possibility of diverting from their line or colliding. But cars running over, it's a possibility in the area. And we started, so when we started this project and in the area, we started also a lot of environmental sensibilization with the community and to talk with people. So usually in the beginning of the season, in the end of the season, we visit schools and we talk with the fishermen that lives in the area. And so Galinha is a really small municipality with just less than 3,000 people living there. And so everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows what is happening in both power lines. So the community is really conscious about that, and because of that, we discovered this new threat, this problem in the road power line. It was by community that we discovered that. So, but also Galinhos has a lot of touristic activity. It's a place that a lot of people that is not from Rio Grande Norte state or even from the city goes. So we are studying the possibility of installing some advisements in the road, asking for slow the velocity of the cars and pointing to animals crossing the roads, and to educate better outside of the city people, outside of the town people that comes to Galinhos. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you definitely answered it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hey, I'll jump in. Thanks, Hapa, so much. Really appreciate the presentation and all the great work. And again, the communication is really amazing. Like the way you're presenting it is really clear, which is difficult sometimes. I guess I just wondered if you have any interest in expanding this work to the roof red knots as well. And I noticed that 2 roof red knots were found on the road power line, and wondering if they have the same vulnerability to collisions with these coastal power lines as roseates.
So yeah, we had during this 3 years of monitoring, I think just these 2 red knots in the first year, and I think we had 1 red knot last year. So this area became this year in Brazil a western site, is one of the 4 Western Hemisphere importance sites, local sites for shorebirds. So this area is recognized as a really important area also for shorebirds. However, so we are monitoring the line and we are seeing any bird that collides. The main comparisons here that I did, it was with Roseate Terns and terns, because it's the highest number of birds that collide with the beach power line is basically terns, common terns and roseate terns. We had like just really few events of other birds colliding. But for the road power line, we had a lot of different species colliding too. So any bird that will be colliding should be, so the marking should work to avoid the collision. And we intend to test that in the next years after marking the road power line, because the diversity of the species colliding there is bigger. And so we will understand if the mark is will be working for some species and other not. So we need to monitor and see what happens. We already know that for terns works really well because in the beach power line, basically terns was colliding, but we don't know for the other species, and we'll discover with the monitoring.
Great, thanks.
Hey, Rafa, how you doing? Caleb Spiegel, good to see you. I have a question about the remaining. It's a really good rate that you're getting of reduction. I'm wondering if you've looked at or have any thoughts on the ones that are still colliding. Are there any variables that you've seen that may explain those areas, or maybe it's a time of day, or any ideas about what's going on there with the ones that are still colliding and why that might be happening?
So as the sampling is really small, some statistic tests are quite difficult to incorporate some covariates, but by empirical observation, we already know that. So we already know that this local bias, this site bias exists. So we see that in the ending and the beginning of this power line, it's more critical areas. So probably because it's a place that birds are using more to cross to the beach area and come back to the roosting sites or go to the river side of the peninsula. And we already know that the most part, basically almost all the collisions happens in the first early hours of the morning between 4:30 morning and 6 a.m. So it's a little bit, the sun is arriving and the sun rises in the sea. So it's against of the vision of the terns that are coming from roosting sites from the riverside and going to the sea. So this could cause some visual obfuscating a little bit. The marking scheme, even being marked, could be still obfuscating a little bit the terns. But it's a really deep analysis that we need to affirm that. But basically, and last year we also had an event of a mass collisions after a night of a lot of wind. So we had 5 terns that collided in the same area after a really wind night. So this covariates points to some wind events could be highlighting a little bit the number of birds colliding, could be influentiating, and the early morning are more critical. The first time of the morning are more critical for collisions, and also dislocation. We have a big reduction of collisions in the middle of the power line compared to the other years. I didn't go deep in dislocation data here, but apparently remains these 2 spots in the sides and in the early morning. So this is still more critical.
If that's interesting, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Thanks.
You're welcome. So Julie has a question here in the chat. So these markers has reflective stripes that in the early morning already start to reflect a little bit the sunlight. and also has a glowing stripe that in the first time of the night is still glowing, even the dusk a little bit. But a UV lighting, we never tried to use in this holes. I know some research that have been using to avoid birds and oil rigs. There's some discussions about lasers and lights affecting some vision of the birds. But so the answer is no. We didn't consider by now using UV lights in the lines. Could be a possibility. I will be completely open to talk about that and maybe try new potential ways to avoid the collisions of the remaining birds that's still colliding with the line.
All right. I don't see any more questions for Rafa. We have a couple minutes left in this session if we want to continue talking about non-breeding. Well, I guess with Rafa on the lines, and a big part of this was growing an international coalition, and we're looking to continue that. Rafa, from your perspective, I'm interested in what's worked well from your end, building partnerships, and what do you think can improve?
Yeah, so this is a fantastic question, actually. I think nothing of that would be possible without a migration-wide coalition alliance perspective between different organizations. We had a lot of effort of different organizations here in Brazil, and a lot of effort of the organizations in the United States and also Canada. So if we are dealing with a migratory species, we need, as you already introduced it in your presentation in the morning, we are dealing with a migratory species that pass a lot of part of the time in another country, and we need to also improve conservation measures and now migratory scale. So this cooperation between a lot of countries and people makes this possible and make us to boost the knowledge about the birds in the area really quickly and really fast. In just 3 years, we didn't know anything about the Roseate Tern dynamic in the northeast part of Brazil, especially in Rio Grande do Norte state by now. So, and now we know a lot about collisions, about threats. We initiate advocacy with the environmental agents to look better to the power line, to energy industry in the coast. And we discovered more roost sites that we didn't know before. And also we are now understanding. So, and this was just possible because of this cooperation between all these groups. It's not a only one institution work, and I'm glad to be a representative of all this effort, but I'm talking in name of everybody that is doing that happens. So work together, we go far when we do that.
That's great, Rafa. Thank you very much. I think we're. I don't know, Allison, if you want to keep going or go to the next session.
Yeah, I think it seems like we're at a good stopping point right here, and there hopefully should be some time at the end if people think of more things to talk about on the wintering grounds, which there are lots. Thank you so much, John, Hafa, and Jeff for presenting. That was really a great ending to it too. I appreciate all the hard work that you guys have put in. I mean, it's just amazing. Like you said, Hafa, how much has been done in 3 years to really make a huge impact for the species. So thank you all that are involved. Continuing a little bit on the lines of non-breeding work, we have Henry Woolley, sorry if I said your name wrong, who would like to present an RFI habitat use map for roseate terns and get everyone's opinion on it. So I will turn it over to Henry.
Thank you, Allison. Hey, everybody. Woolley, I think that's pretty much what you said.
Oh, and you got a saltmarsh sparrow there. Nice.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, so that's my little mascot there, but talking about terns today. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I have a little quick kind of background presentation so you all have some context for what we're talking about. And then I'll show you the maps and we can talk about them. There we go. Okay. So basically, like the context for this map that I made and I'll be showing is that as part of compensatory mitigation for impacts to roseate terns and other species from offshore wind energy development, Fish and Wildlife Service is putting out a request for information, which is, essentially like a publicly posted advertisement of a desire to collaborate on this project. I'll get a little bit more into definitions, stuff like that. But so immediate context is that the map that this project is for is to inform potential mitigation projects and partnerships. So briefly, I'll go over, what is an RFI, how we made this map, and then what I hope to accomplish today. So basically, we're issuing an RFI for 5 listed species, roseate terns being one. So basically an RFI is like an RFP, a request for proposals, but it doesn't come with any kind of perceived promise of funding or collaboration. It's somewhat less binding. So like an RFP, it's a publicly posted, and we'll share it around to other federal agencies, state agencies, kind of regional partnership organizations, and and then ask for them to share it on. In this case, we're asking for information about these potential partners' abilities to help us do mitigation projects. And it's, as I mentioned, different from an RFP because, it doesn't, we're not making any promises. And it's my understanding that this, we went with a RFI over RFP because a solicitor just suggested that might be a more flexible approach. Yeah, so we'll be these maps. They're inserted into the RFI, which is a pretty substantial document outlining everything we want to accomplish and guides to, submit information and stuff like that. What we really want to show with these maps is our current understanding of habitat use by these species, which will serve to highlight any data gaps that we may have about the habitat use by these species, and also serve to show where we're thinking about preliminary mitigation focal areas. So to make this map, and the next slide has a picture of the map, but so that's what it looks like. The blue is the breeding range, and then the green is non-breeding range, and with some caveats, which I'll get into. But basically, the blue breeding range I downloaded from Ecos and modified it according to feedback from Fish and Wildlife Service people, and then the non-breeding range, the green range, we are using with permission from Birds of the World. So some of the input that we got from subject matter experts, the breeding range of the northern colonies doesn't extend south of Long Island. So cut that off. South of Long Island. It does extend north into Canada, but we didn't include that because there wasn't a good shapefile that I could access, and we're focusing mainly on US territories, although the RFI is framed to say, we may expand and consider international projects if feasible, but of course those come with other contexts. So that's something we can talk about if we want to change how that's shown. And I'll get into more information about the map disclaimer on the next slide, but we decided how we wanted to contextualize what we're showing. Like a map is, in some ways, and in this way, we're using it as like a jumping off point to show, our understanding at this moment in time of habitat use of this species as it relates to our mitigation goals. So we're not necessarily, we're trying to be as thorough as possible, but of course things change, there's limits to information, and good enough is a good enough starting place, and we can adjust as we go. One consideration was to include a migratory corridor from band 2012 model. We didn't wind up including that because it was incomplete and kind of didn't really get at mitigation focal areas, but that's something we can talk more about. I'll show you what it looks like with and without. So yeah, it's probably pretty small, the disclamatory text there, but I can read it. It's that bolded at the bottom of the map. It says the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recognizes that the non-breeding range may extend beyond what is depicted in this map. We're committed to collaborating with mitigation partners to identify and implement appropriate mitigation projects. This map is intended to serve as a general guide reflecting the current understanding of habitat use. The USFWS does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the map and assumes no liability for actions or decisions made based on its content. And then the non-bolded text is data sources and Esri copyright. So what I'd love to get your input about is, do we want to show the breeding range that's in blue, extending into Canada? If so, I'll either need to work with you to help me draw it, or if you're aware of any existing layers, we could use that. Another recommendation was to include a larger swath of Venezuela. The guidance related to that was that tagged common terns use a broader swath during non-breeding. And then similarly, do we want to expand what's shown in the Caribbean to include areas shown in the band migratory corridor model, which shows broad use. So this is what it looks like with the migratory corridor, just in that line, that black line. So that's what I wanted to go over. I think I should probably continue to share my screen, but I'm going to switch out of the presentation so that we can focus on these maps more, and we can switch. This is the one. Let's see. I haven't been able to, I see that there we go. Birds of the World not share the breeding range portion. That's something that I can follow up about. The saltmarsh sparrow looks sinister. No telling what's on a bird's mind. Made it on the mural. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just getting caught up with the chat. Yeah, U.S. recovery plan does include objectives for Canada. We can show that. I just need to know what to show. Yeah, and then now I'm caught up to Birds of the World, not share the breeding range portion. I can follow up with Birds of the World. So I'm going to get a little recommendations document going that we can work on together. And let's see. Let's see. Complete and accurate as possible. Agreed. Breeding wintering areas. Okay, we have a polygon for Atlantic Canada breeding. That's excellent. Thank you for that, Allison. And then let's see. Melissa is saying, yeah, Melissa just replied. We started with ECOS for all species coverage in the US and then reached out to other organizations for ranges outside the US. So that's why we went with that split. And honestly, it was just in talking with folks, I wound up just doing a buffer, a 24, wish I could scroll and zoom. Yeah, 24 nautical mile buffer along the coast here. So that's what that is. Yeah. So open to just kind of an open conversation. I can respond to comments in the chat. I imagine, this is pretty quick. So I wouldn't be surprised if you all have clarification questions, which I'd be happy to answer. A recommendation to, based on use telemetry data for a polygon, that I'd be open to that. I just need to have access to that data and work with someone who knows the context for it. Like, one thing I run into mapping is I'm familiar with the tools that we use to map, but I in this case have much less of a background in understanding this species. So what I really need when I'm making these maps is to have conversations and kind of do things in real time to understand that make sure that I'm using these things correctly and showing what makes sense.
There's some hands up. Probably can't see. I think Joan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Henry. You might want to look at eBird as well, especially for information along the coast of Venezuela and some of the site locations for the Caribbean. That may be one of the better places, especially for Venezuela. And you can drill down into the eBird and decide what you would accept as whether you want photos or repeated sightings or whatever. But I think that could be an easy way for you to get some point locations they've already been curated by the eBird the eBird folks.
Okay.
I wouldn't rule that out. I'm just looking at the map right now, and it looks like it would be a great starting place for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Joan. And you can request the data from eBird, and it comes with the GPS location.
Excellent.
We have also John with a question or comment.
Yeah, just I guess a comment on the Caribbean and Venezuela, like looking at stopover habitat. If that's I mean, our sample size is 3, so it's not a lot, but we're starting to gain evidence that of habitat use for this population, at least on spring migration from our data, extends a little bit into northern Venezuela and into the like St. Vincent region in the Caribbean. So we do have some evidence, again, very small sample size, but hopefully that will continue to grow.
Yeah.
And you
so
can,
can I follow
you can
up
reach
with...
out to me and our partners on that.
Okay. Thank you. Here's the map with the migratory corridor. Yes, Rachel, that would be lovely if you could send that shape file. Absolutely, yeah. So that would be great. Thank you. Let's see, there's a further, okay, interesting, wintering area. Yeah, further south. Okay. Cool. That's great.
And if you need more information on Caribbean nesting sites, even though that's technically not the, Northwest Atlantic breeding population, or are you looking for primarily stopover habitat?
Let's see. Well, yeah, I probably think so, because, what I do know about terns is that, roseate terns, mitigation is going to be kind of tricky. Just because they spend a lot of time, they're pelagic, and then they're very localized with where they breed. So, it may be that where we can actually get to do mitigation projects, we might be limited in that. If that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it seems to me, and I'm sure the consensus is to make this as broad as possible rather than too restricted. We do have a lot of partners, as was brought up multiple times, that are working on tracking studies right now that could provide very specific data. So
okay.
Whatever level of data you need from us, I can help connect you with the right people.
Awesome. Okay.
And that's a great question. Melissa just brought up, is there another opportunity to review a next iteration of this, and could we share it widely to the group? Would you want that sort of input?
Yeah, I'm very open to that. I think, I've been, I should have mentioned, I've been working closely with Melissa on this project. So anything she wants to do, I'm on board with. So that's a yes for me. Um, I'm just seeing the comment from David about the MDAT. Yeah, okay, so just to finish this thought, Allison, you can put me in touch with tracking data sources. Okay.
They're all right here pretty much, but
okay. All right. And then
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The Sarah's question, is that what you were gonna?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I just want to make sure like you get all your questions out from us.
Okay, thank you. So Sarah wants to know the purpose of this. Is it to document where mitigation can occur? Would it be all right until Team Track gets their data back from this upcoming season?
Yeah, sorry, I can explain that a little bit more. And also, I apologize if you already went over this. It's just day 3 and later during the day. So my brain's a little messed up.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, so is this, you're trying to figure out where mitigation can occur, and then you're going to be presenting this to the offshore wind folks, and we're helping you kind of outline places where we would like to see mitigation happening along the track of the Roseate Tern's general history.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like a big part of it. It's like that's the main purpose, is to show. So these maps are inserted into a document which we're sharing with federal and non-government partners, which is a request for information about, and I don't think I clarified this at the beginning, it's about establishing an in-LUFI program or mitigation bank program, but I think specifically in LUFI for mitigation to impacts from offshore wind energy development for these 5 species, Roseate Terns included. So the main goal is to communicate both what we understand about where these species go, and also for the purpose of highlighting both data gaps and also appropriate areas to focus on mitigation, if that answers your question.
That does answer my question. And then when do you need the end product by?
Right. Yeah, so that's the thing. We are trying to get this document out the door, but we can, we're hoping to kind of develop partnerships with these groups so that we can basically, point being, just because this map can evolve as we get more and better information, and then we can kind of further inform our mitigation partners.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Rafael, for sharing that resource for the Brazilian website, government website. Thank you for that. And I see Caleb.
Yeah. Hey, Henry. Yeah, just my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the map is to really just guide where you get responses from people that have that kind of expertise and knowledge, right? So you're kind of going to be, I think, looping back to some of the folks here anyway, to some extent.
Absolutely.
So, I think I don't think that, in my mind anyway, it's not as critical to be exactly precise, but you do want to be comprehensive and make sure it's all encompassing, like definitely include Canada, for example,
Okay.
and everywhere where there could potentially be any kind of wintering area known, even if it's not necessarily a hotspot. I think it's better to err on the side of being inclusive than cut. I think Allison was saying this too, than cutting anything out. Anyway, yeah, that's what I would recommend. And I think it can still be, it doesn't have to be as precise. I mean, a lot of people here have data that it's really, really specific, but I think you're just looking for, general boundaries within which potential work would be done.
Exactly. Yep.
From the perspective of, So anyway, so I think that's just so people are clear. It doesn't have to be super precise. It should be, if anything, all encompassing of where we know the boundaries to be.
Yeah, that's really good clarification. Thank you for that. That's spot on.
And I think it would be helpful to just clarify, once the in lieu fee process is set up, that like experts will be consulted on before like decisions are made on its application.
Yeah, we're explicit about that in the RFI document.
Kitty.
As Wendy. I see Grace has her hand up. Go ahead, Grace.
You're muted, Grace. Mic button is in the top right, like the third thing over if you can't find it. All right, I think we should probably move on. But definitely, Grace, please put stuff in the chat. And if you want to stick around, we will be talking, about stuff that might be relevant, but up to you, obviously, Henry.
Okay, appreciate y'all. And I thanks for all these great resources. Thanks for helping me out with this, and I'll definitely be following up. And likewise, if I can help you with anything or you have any more questions, please reach out.
Sounds good. All right, so we are going to move on to our recovery planning general discussion. Jess Espinosa is actually starting her work on a Roseate Tern SSA, and she was going to present a little bit more on the process and how we could help her not have to do all the work just herself.
That would be awesome. Okay, I will share. Okay. Can you see? Yes, you see this. Okay, awesome. Okay, so hi everybody again. In case you missed my earlier presentation, I'm Jess Espinosa, but now I'm coming at you from the fish and wildlife side of things. I'm a Pathways intern working up in the Region 5 office in Hadley, Massachusetts, and I'm also a PhD student at UConn. I'm part of a group of people with Rachel Stevens and others at US Fish and Wildlife that's in charge of the process of creating a species status assessment, or SSA, for the roseate to help facilitate future recovery actions and to update other outdated documents. So today I'll give you a brief rundown of the process and where we are thus far. And since we have a group of experts gathered here today, I also have a couple questions to ask the group about content. So I'll start off with a brief overview of the SSA framework and why we're working on an SSA. So the purpose of the SSA is to assess a species' biological condition by describing the viability of a species in a way that supports ESA decisions, including recovery planning. The SSA generally consists of a section that provides an overview of the species' needs and the status of those needs, which leads into a section describing the species' current condition throughout its range and life cycle. Then an SSA generally includes a future species condition, which discusses potential future viability of the species under a variety of future scenarios. Once the SSA is created, it can be used to inform a number of different documents and decisions, including 5-year reviews, listing and delisting decisions, critical habitat decisions, and recovery planning documents. So when we look specifically at the purpose of creating a roseate SSA, at the most basic level, it's because there was never an SSA created for the roseate, even though it's a listed species. And now, currently, if a species is being evaluated for listing or recovery, creation of an SSA via a specific core team of people would be the first step. But since the SSA is a relatively new kind of document, there are many listed species without SSAs, including the roseate tern. So therefore, the SSA's main purpose is to inform recovery planning for roseates. And as the purpose of the roseate SSA isn't to inform a listing decision, we're treating it as a recovery SSA rather than a listing SSA. And I'll also mention that this SSA is specifically for the endangered northeastern North American population of the subspecies that breeds in the US from Maine to New York. The threatened Caribbean population is considered separate, and so it has its own recovery documentation. So as the northeastern population is already listed, it has this recovery plan that's already in place, and there are mandatory reviews of the species that take place every 5 years. The next 5-year review will be due in 2025, so getting an SSA out soon can help inform that review is one of our top priorities. And in addition, the last update to the roseate recovery plan was way back in 1998, so the species is way overdue for an updated recovery plan. So looking at the sections of the roseate SSA, we have them laid out here. We start with species needs, which includes things like a base description of the roseate tern, its range, limiting habitat features, essential life history functions, things like that. Then we move on to threats and stressors. So what's happening in general to roseate terns throughout their range, both as a whole and to specific colonies or groups in terms of resources and viability. Next, we have sections on the historical and current conditions of roseate terns. So what's happened to the species in the past to get us to this point in time, and what's the current status of the species throughout its range. Then we have future conditions and scenarios, which is where we describe future threats and how these might manifest in low threat and high threat scenarios. This might mean doing additional analyses to figure out the occupancy, abundance, or habitat of the species, how these might do under certain environmental or otherwise adverse conditions that are dictated by those threat level scenarios. And lastly, we often include conservation efforts. So this includes any good things that are happening to ameliorate the threats or stressors that we mentioned above. So as you're all roseate experts, we'd like to get your input in a little brainstorming session. So to start off, here are the major threats that we came up with that impact the whole population of roseates. These include climate change, habitat loss, changes in prey availability, predation, and disease. And on the next slides, I'll give you a chance to provide some input on variation in the threats throughout the year, as well as to specific colonies or groups. So this chart gives the primary and secondary threats for roseates specifically based on where they are at different times in the year. The stressors in gray are the major ones I mentioned in the previous page. I just didn't restate them here because we're assuming that there's threats for all of these stages, for all of these places. And you'll notice there are some empty boxes here. And I'll give everybody a minute or two to think about whether there's anything you think should be moved around, added, otherwise changed in this chart. And I'll be recording thoughts people have so that I can add them in here. And then I'll ask the same about the colonies on the next slide. So if you have specific colony threats, save those for the next slide. Awesome. Thanks. Okay, Carolyn, I think you have your hand up.
How did you decide what was a primary threat versus a secondary threat?
Good question. So mainly it was based off of the previous recovery documents that we had. They had listed out primary, secondary, and basically things that are no longer a threat. And some of those since it is an old document, had to be slightly updated, but I'm basically going based off of that documentation with slight modification. So if you think there are things that maybe need further modification, let me know, and I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about oil spills because we did have a significant oil spill in Buzzards Bay back in 2003. So I don't know if it should be in primary or secondary, but it has the potential to be, those things have the potential to be pretty devastating, but they also are likely to occur at a reduced frequency compared to things like competition from gulls, which is annual. You know, invasive plants, erosion, those are kind of annual issues. Disease, if you're looking at trying to define things that are kind of like chronic and ongoing as primary threats, you know, disease might be more like a secondary threat, like it's potentially really episodic and can be pretty devastating in some years, but it might not be an annual occurrence.
That's a good thing to note, because there are a bunch of things on here that, as you said, they are happening every year, but they might not be devastating the population or the community every year. It might be something we don't want, but it's not going to wipe out the entire community, for instance. But if you have, say, an oil spill, that's not likely to happen, but if it does happen, it wipes everything out. So I've been looking through other SSAs, and mainly they don't include a way to distinguish that, but it is something that I want to try and include here. So that's a good point. That this has also happened on, you said Ram Island, not Bird Island, or?
Well, it was throughout Buzzards Bay, but it was the worst on Ram. But yeah, it seems like there should be a definition somewhere for primary and secondary threats.
Okay, I think Allison, you also have your hand up.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to know if you had access or if you had the survey that we did last year to the group that summarized the threats and actions to address them, plus extra info. Have you gotten that yet? If not, I can share it with you.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the summary, but I had the slides. So that also informed some of this as well.
Perfect.
So yeah, that was a good point. I actually put some of this in here, but I don't know if there was like a better summary or something that somebody wrote up. I just have the literal screenshot of the slides.
Well, I do have a summary I can share with you, and even if it's the same, I'll still share it.
Awesome, thanks. Okay. All right, anything else before we move on to the colony specific stuff, or? Hafa?
Hey, Jazz.
Hey.
I would say, my camera's off. I would say for non-breeding grounds to the habitat list. Oh, sorry. There's some.
I wrote in community center and it brought me.
Maybe. Yeah, I would say habitat loss to, we start to observe. So we are just in beginning to understand of some movements in the area. But apparently the terns here select the areas based in the distance for foraging grounds. And and these areas should have some sandbanks or some projections of beach, really secure beach areas that you have been losing with the approaching of a lot of wind turbines in the coastline, and also a lot of distress in the coastline at all. So and the climate change with the rising of the ocean have been becoming a threat to losing these specific sites that probably are really important to be close to the foraging area. So the habitat loss definitely could be something to be added in the non-breeding grounds too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sea level rise. I'm assuming sea level rise is a threat to all of these grounds, but yeah, it's definitely it's good to know what sea level rise is specifically going to be affecting in the different areas, because as you said, it's affecting the areas close to foraging. So that's good to know. Thanks. And I might ping you again about some other stuff. Thanks. All right. Anything else, or then I can move on to the next slide. You can also
There's a
ask
lot. I'm
questions.
not sure if you can see it, but there's really a lot of
Oh,
comments in the chat.
I can't see the comments.
Yeah,
Let me
a lot of good.
see. Yeah, because I'm only seeing my window, and I don't know if somebody's able to read out any of those. Sorry.
Yeah, just I mean, some of the stuff is about where what stages some of the stuff is potentially occurring in. For example, well, some of the most recent we're talking about offshore wind and other kind of wind in on the non-breeding grounds. Also, exploratory oil off of Brazil is ramping up. We have some, let's see, anthropogenic disturbance on staging grounds. Someone mentioned, what about hurricanes to breeding grounds? We haven't had one in a while, but have had them in the past, and that is true. They can have an impact. Storms in general, not even just hurricanes. Let's see, add sand mining for beach nourishment as a major threat to roseate terns at staging areas around Cape Cod. I'm actually copying these chats, and I can, they're not going to be available for a while on the Marine Bird Cooperative website, but I can share them with you if it's helpful earlier than that.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Send you a link. Yep. Because there's a lot of good suggestions in here.
Yeah, feel free. Thanks, Philip. Feel free.
Sure.
Anybody else to keep putting stuff in the chat. I also don't want to take up all the time, so I might move to the next slide, and then of course feel free to add anything else or email me as well, because I know we only have a few minutes. So okay, so here this is now looking closer at the breeding colonies. And we know again that there are similar threats that span all the colonies that I went over before. But for these, we're really interested in specific threats that you're seeing to specific colonies or groups above. And I'll also note that these groups right now are broken into analysis units based on location and the latest recovery planning documents. And the three largest colonies, so ram, bird, and a great gull, they're being treated as separate entities. And we didn't include non-breeding grounds here because they're in the other slide. But that would be an additional analysis unit. And as I work on great gull, I filled in some of those boxes for the colony, but I don't know specific threats about other colonies. So feedback's welcome. Again, I don't want to take up all the time. Feel free to put stuff in the chat. Feel free to email, but if anybody has comments, that would be great.
Jess, I'm happy to email you about bird and ram threats. It's a lot of the same ones that you showed on your earlier slide.
That would be great. Thanks, Carolyn.
Yeah, if it would be helpful, Jess, to have some sort of form that we could send to colony managers for these sorts of things, I'm happy to help distribute that.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. To get some info.
You could start, Jess, with Jess, you could start with the list of the Great Gull Island threats that we did in the workshop and just build that out. Just grab that off the Marathi share. We can give that to you. And a lot of people just tick the same boxes.
Yeah, I figure a lot of people do. But just to try and be thorough. But yeah, I'll check on that as well. I couldn't fit everything else in this small chart, but Rachel, you have your hand up.
Ask if people would be kind enough to copy me on those information sharing emails that you're sending to Jess as well, please. Because when her expertise has graduated, it's going to be left on me to finish up these other supporting documents. So that would be really helpful. Appreciated.
Most certainly, and I'll share your email in the chat so everyone has it. Once again.
Thank you.
And Margaret.
Yeah, Jess, I just wanted to remind you on this business of ranking primary versus secondary threats in that Marathi file that Joan just referred to, and in the conservation plan, we're developing anyway. There was a process for deciding what was primary and what was secondary, and that might help you think about how to classify things, not only on Great Gull, but sort of trying to take a similar conceptual approach, at least, to what's primary and secondary elsewhere as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good idea. Okay, yeah, I'll look at that. Yeah, I was basically going based off the old documents, but it's seeming like they're not super clear on that. So, and we probably just need update for that. So it's a good idea. Okay. Anything else? I mean, we started late, so I'm not sure. But
well, this is the most important part of the whole thing is us just, coming together and thinking about all the stuff we've been doing and how it can lead to recovery. So, as much time as we need for this, that's fine.
Cool. And again, I'll look at the chat after I stop sharing. I just can't see it unless I...
If you go to the top center, you can click people, actually, like next to on your PowerPoint presentation, and then it'll bring up this, and you can see the chat too if you click chat.
That was weird. Okay, I thought it was just people, but that makes sense. Thanks, Allison.
Yeah,
it's a new discovery for me today.
And don't feel just like you have to write everything down, because I'm taking notes and I'll just send them to you in an email afterwards.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yep.
And I'll just put up this last slide here in case anybody has any questions about SSAs or the Roseate info on Fish and Wildlife. These links are great. And here's my email as well in case you don't have that. Yeah, I'm just looking through the chat right now.
And while you're doing that, I'm actually just gonna share something that I was planning on talking about, which is literally the same stuff. So this will go well, I think. This was kind of a summary of some of the things we talked about last year. Some of the outcomes of the additional threats that we talked about. And I was hoping that, this might spur on people just to think a little bit more. Right now, it seems like the group is really focused on figuring out movement patterns for these birds, where they're going, what they're doing, which is so critical. But we have still some outstanding things on our 2023 meeting thoughts. And I thought that there might also be more things that people need to put in here. And some of this will, of course, could inform the SSA. But I think just inform all of us of is there more stuff we should be worrying about? It looks like, the nest box thing. So if we look at the black part, that is what we kind of talked about last year as additional threats that we hadn't really been thinking about maybe as a group or at least in my knowledge, as much previously, or maybe people had been and it just came out. But if there's more stuff that we should think about beyond this. So nest boxes, I think a lot of work is being done on that, obviously by Jess and others, Carolyn and others. A lot of, a big one is thinking about the small islands and how losing them potentially could impact the population. Some of this going into a PVA, thinking about adult mortality and how that's related to climate change. A lot of discussion about forage fish and what might happen with some of these offshore wind projects, as well as other things happening. The relationships between common terns and roseate terns, I think, is an interesting one that maybe isn't in your document yet. And if that's an important relationship, and like, can roseate terns persist on a large island without common terns? And what happens if we lose our common terns? And then, of course, some of the other things here over on the right that are a little bit more specific. But if anyone else has anything that we should add to this, speak up or throw that in the chat as well, because I think these are just some avenues that we can think about for continued research. And yeah, genetic bottleneck, that's a good one. Which leads kind of to needing to analyze that data that was brought back from Brazil on who's who with the birds that are perishing in Brazil, as well as what's going to happen if we lose our small colonies. Is that kind of both of those things? And okay, sorry, Margaret, feel free to speak up.
Thanks, Allison, and thanks for actually bringing us back to this set of thoughts from the 2023 meeting here on the nest box question, and that first question on your list. Whether empty nest boxes suggest we're not habitat limited. I think, Jess's really great work on the subject at Great Gull Island suggests pretty strongly that boxes are not boxes, right? That it matters what you put out, that they actively are rejecting boxes that don't have certain characteristics that they actually care about, and we'll have a much better idea of whether or not we have, we're habitat limited or population limited, whether we just don't have enough birds to fill the available boxes when we've done a better job of replacing those boxes with models that Jess's works suggest sort of, maximize the occupancy. And I think, everybody working together to look carefully at how the birds are interacting with their boxes and how those birds are doing compared to birds out of boxes would really help us a lot in understanding whether we've got unoccupied habitat out there or not.
Thank you. That's helpful. Sure. Carolyn.
Thanks, Allison. I wanted to talk for a minute about the small sites. I think we've spent a lot of time stressing out over the years about our sites not getting bigger. And, the original recovery plan aims to establish, I think it's 5 large colonies with over 200 pairs each, if I'm not mistaken. Jess has probably looked at that more recently than I have. And, that's really been a struggle. And as others have said before, I think we have to accept that the roseates want to be aggregated, and they don't really, most of them don't really want to be in the small colonies, and that's why we're not being successful. However, it is incredibly important to be maintaining these small colonies because of big episodic events. And we did see that when we had a major oil spill, that one of our small colonies became a big colony. It didn't last forever, but it provided a very important function during episodic events. And, you know, one episodic event could be a new administration in the next 4 years, or will be a new administration in the next 4 years that could have very large impacts on how especially our federal partners are able to manage their colonies. It may impact common tern colonies, you know, common terns more than roseates, but you know, the potential to lose some of these small colonies that our federal partners are managing because of issues related to the upcoming administration is maybe a primary threat. You know, we've got this absolutely astounding colony of common terns at Monomoy that is going to be under real threat if Monomoy does not have the funds to manage. So I think we just have to be keeping in the forefront the real importance of these small colonies, the real importance of our federally managed colonies. And, you know, all of our, you know, a lot of us are under a lot of funding strain, you know, state of Massachusetts as well. So we really need to keep our collaborative spirit strong within the group and help each other out where we can. You know, I've benefited from that collaboration many times, and you know, more so in the past decade when our funding has become unstable. So really appreciate everyone who's, you know, working on all of this stuff, breeding area, wintering area, and all of that. We really need to stick together. Thanks.
That's so true, Carolyn. Thank you. That was really good for us to remember. And that's an important part of this group, working to help the species together. Go ahead, Jem.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the lack of redundancy in this population. We have been able over the last few years with some concerted effort to be able to really increase the size of the great gull colony. And I wonder if we should be thinking about exporting some of those tools and trying to restore or model where another good colony could possibly be, with the attempt to develop some other satellite sites. We are going to have Plum Island online at some point. We're going to have to know how to get roseates there. There are sites like Gardener's Island, as well as Penakees, where we did have good colonies, where we don't anymore. We stay very focused on what we already have, rightfully so. But if we don't think about things like barges, for instance, if we don't start experimenting with stuff like that now, the folks 25 years from now are not going to be happy with us. So I think taking the tools that we're all that are successful at being able to grow our large colonies and bringing them to smaller sites may end up being something that really could benefit us in the future.
And I think another great example to pull from Great Gull is just the fact that you guys have been working on, you know, management plan, and I'm sure that that's been, you know, thought of and probably worked on many other colonies as well. And I think sharing those with each other and developing them in conjunction would be really helpful, I think, for the species as well, in this vein of things.
Yeah, the management planning is really great because it helps you to do more with less and to stay focused.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughts on this. If you have any other thoughts that come to you at any point, feel free to reach out. I did want to make clear that, you know, Rachel is going to be taking over a lot of, in fact, by a lot, I mean probably all of the regulatory work for Roseate Terns. But, you know, due to time constraints, it might be hard for her to focus completely on the recovery side of things. Suzanne and myself will always be working on that with you all. And so you have a lot of resources within the service to help you. But obviously, we're not the only resources. You have all of each other. And so, you know, this working group is really successful just because of everyone who's here and everyone who cares about the birds. And so if there is anything that you are thinking of that the working group can help push forward, such as if there are additional, you know, breakout groups that need to happen that I assume you probably don't need help with because everyone knows everyone. But anything on that vein of things, please reach out. Bring them up now, bring them up later. We're all here to work together on that. And with that being said, if anyone has anything else they wanted to discuss, we still have 35 people here for the last 3 minutes. So we could get one more quick discussion going. Reference genome, yeah. All right, it looks like DNA stuff's in the works. Okay, well, it looks like everyone is ready to move along. I just want to say thank you so much. I know most everyone's gone, but thank you to everyone who has took the time to join us, to speak, to share all the great work they've been doing. You're all incredible, and the species wouldn't be around without you. So thank you so much. Thank you, Caleb, and thank you to Suzanne, who couldn't make it this week, but also put in some good work with setting up the meeting. So thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Been great working with you. Good job.
Definitely.
Thanks everybody
Bye,
for all
everyone.
your great work.
Hey, Allison.
Hey.
So many resources got thrown into the chat, and I was trying to pull them out as we went along, but I'm sure I missed some. Would it be possible to send everybody a copy of the chat? Because I know you're saving it.
Yes, absolutely. We will definitely do that.
That would be super helpful.
We actually have it set up as a Google Doc on the Marine Bird Cooperative Google site. And so I think it's an open link. So we should be able to just circulate that link. And there's a lot of chat notes from all through, but they're sorted by day and by topic. So
right, exactly.
Yep.
Well, thanks very much to both of you for the work to put this together. I know that it's a huge lift to try and herd so many cats, but
It's been
incredibly incredibly valuable.
No, it's been great. It's all the partners are fantastic. So it makes it a lot easier.
Exactly. It's thanks to you and everyone else that it's really so successful. So thank you.
You bet. All right. Thanks so long.
Bye.
All right. You got